Hey, this is Anthony from This Wildlife, and you're listening to Breakdowns for Breakfast podcast.
Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Breakdowns for Breakfast. I am your host, Danger, and joining me is a fellow that I cannot properly break down an album without, Monster. Say hi, Monster.
Yo, morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. And on this episode of Breakdowns for Breakfast, sorry, I didn't ask you.
Well,
No, you're. Yeah,
I'm fine. I'm fine. Really, I'm fine.
Whatever. Yeah, your face told me that you wanted me to say it. So how are you?
Too late.
Yeah, all right.
Too late.
On this episode of Breakdowns for Breakfast, we are rounding out Ladies Month by talking about Paramore's album, Riot. Riot was released June 12th, 2007. Now, Monster, I have given you very little of my opinion about this album. Mm-hmm. Where are you with this album? Where are you with Paramore?
This won't be the first time on this show that I have upset fans of popular bands, so I'm getting pretty used to this at this point. I don't like it very much. Okay, so I'll be honest. I think everybody went through that pop punk phase. And for me, I graduated high school in 2004. So the bulk of my pop punk was spent between 2000 and 2004. Right. So the stuff that started to trickle out after that, it kind of went past me. It wasn't on my radar. That includes Paramore. Obviously, I knew the hits. Obviously, I knew who Hayley Williams was, but I didn't own this album. I didn't own any other albums. I didn't really care. Now, within the past, maybe 5-6 years, Hayley Williams has become a huge pop star in her own right. I believe Paramore just got done touring with Taylor Swift.
Yes, they were her opening band.
Yeah, so good on them. Obviously, they have a lot more fans than little old me, so who cares what I think? But for me, personally, especially not having any nostalgic love for this album, it's just pretty generic pop rock, like wannabe pop punk, but it's not really. It's very kind of edgeless, I guess you could say.
It's pop emo.
Yeah, but it's even not that.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. In fact...
Yeah, so tell me what you think about Paramore and this album.
So this album is one of my favorite albums of all time, is what I would say if I really like this album, but I don't like this album.
Man, I was hoping we were going to fight this whole episode.
No, so there are things on this album that I like, but this is not an album. And to be honest with you, before we decided to do it for the show, I had never listened to this album all the way through.
Oh, me neither.
I know the hits off of this. I know the singles, but I didn't know this album really at all. And I found out why.
Well, okay. And I think maybe I had a misconception because I knew they were on Fueled by Ramen, and I knew some of the other bands they toured with and stuff over the years.
Okay, before we go any further, let's talk about Fueled by Ramen, because I want to talk about other bands that were on Fueled by Ramen at the time, either before or at the time. And I don't have the exact dates for each of these, but I'm just going to list off some bands. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
A Day to Remember, All Time Low, Fall Out Boy, 21 Pilots, 303, The Academy Is, Autopilot Off, Cute Is What We Aim For, Dashboard Confessional, Gym Class Heroes, Jimmy World, Less Than Jake, Phantom Planet, The Pie Tasters, Slick Shoes, Sublime with Rome, not Sublime, Sublime with Rome. Okay. Travie McCoy, Yellow Card, Young the Giant, Cobra Starship, The Hippos, Homegrown, Panic at the Disco, and Versa Emerge. Do you remember where we talked about Versa Emerge before?
Oh my God, I thought you were getting ready to say, do you remember the third band I listed? And I thought I was getting ready to get quizzed.
No, but just because you said that, the third band I listed was Fall Out Boy.
Okay, good. Yeah, that name sounds familiar.
We talked about the lead singer of Versa Emerge was on the last track of the A Day to Remember album that we did.
And hey, sweetie, well, I need you here tonight.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So when I saw that, I was like, wait a second. And so, yeah. So, okay. That is quite a roster for for anything, for an album, for a label, of course. But yeah, that's quite the roster. Now, not all those bands I'm a fan of, and some of them I was surprised to see there.
Okay, and that leads into what I was going to say before you read off that roster was, I think because of the label they were on and the bands they toured with, I was expecting a little something more aggressive. Like, I knew that they were very pop. I mean, Hayley Williams is, like I said, she has a great pop vocal. And I had heard the couple of hits over the years, especially the newer stuff is super, super poppy.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought the first couple albums were a little bit more aggressive. And they're not really. I went back and listened to the album before this, and it's a little bit more. But by this point, I think they already knew Hayley Williams had star potential, and they shouldn't go too aggressive because they didn't want to possibly jeopardize that.
Okay, so I want to talk about a couple things that I found about the band. And I found somebody that compared this album to if you could mix Kelly Clarkson and Avril Lavigne together.
Okay, yes. This is way more, and I bring this up later. It took me a couple songs to pinpoint it, but this reminds me of like Ashley Tisdale, Disney Channel's version of pop punk more than genuine pop punk.
It's like, I feel like it was more along the lines of like an Ashley Simpson.
For the record, I saw Ashley Simpson in concert. I also went and saw Miley Cyrus in concert when she was still like teetering with the Hannah Montana thing. I don't have a problem with that bubblegum kind of pop rock. That's cool.
I don't either, but
it's catchy as hell.
It is, but this one just didn't land.
Yeah, that's not what I was expecting at all. Like, I was expecting a rock band with a pop female vocalist,
right?
And that's like 4 tracks on this album, and then the rest sounds like formulaic, written by a machine pop rock.
Yes, and now I can say that here we are at the end of Ladies Month, and I don't think that we hated on any album the way that we're about to on this. I mean, if we have listeners that choose not to come back, we're probably not going to notice because our numbers are not that great already. But
no, they're very low. They're very low.
But they're getting better. But I can't blame anybody who is a diehard fan of this band. Turn around and go, I'm never listening to that show again. They should all over my favorite album.
Well, here's what I told Mrs. Monster before we started recording. Every band is somebody's favorite band, and every album is somebody's favorite album.
Right.
You cannot get upset if somebody else does not share that love for an artist or an album. With that being said, this came out in 2007.
Yes.
If this album means a lot to you, it's probably because who you were in 2007 related really hard to this. And you loved it, and you've carried it with you ever since. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have plenty of albums from the mid 90s that I still do that with. But if you stop and look at each song objectively for how good or bad they are, it's going to make you feel different. I'll tell you right now, my favorite album of all time is the Blue Album by 311. I know good and well that's not even their best album. It's got all kinds of cheesy, corny shit in it that I have lived with for 20 some years. And it's still my favorite album, but there's plenty to make fun of on that record. So I don't expect everybody to agree with me, you know?
All right, hold on. Stop. I'm going to go back. The Blue Album wasn't that their first album?
No, that was their third album.
Okay. Their third album. When did that album come out?
95.
And you said 20 some years.
Yes.
Do your math.
I rounded down.
You did. You rounded very down. Okay, so here's a thought that I had while listening to this. So Paramore is the Bob Dylan of emo. I'm supposed to like them, but I just don't.
Everybody has told us for years, you have to like us.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, they were on Warped Tour. they were in all the places that bands were that we like other bands. And it's like, it's just, you're supposed to like this band, and I just don't. And the thing about it is, just like we talked about on I Am Abomination and A Marionette, all the parts are here of things that we should like. But the difference is, any one of those individual songs from those other two bands were great. I don't think there's a full song here. Well, no, there's a couple songs here that I actually do like, but I just like, it's a good EP.
It's one of those things where I can honestly say that I was kind of enjoying the first few songs, but then after the first maybe 20 minutes of the album, it all started to just kind of sound like filler. Like, it all sounded like you said, there's a really good EP in here. There's 4 or 5 songs that I think really stand out, but in general, it's just, a big part of it is expectation. A big part of it is I've never listened to this album. I had heard the hits. I knew they started as a pop punk band, and now they're much more of just a pop act, which is totally cool. Same thing Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco have done. Not a problem. They've had huge careers. I get it. But I was expecting a little bit more old Fall Out Boy, old Panic at the Disco, not Avril Lavigne, Kelly Clarkson.
And, there's been plenty of times that, we've talked about this off mics. I think we talked about it some on mics, but there's plenty of albums that I've picked up and listened to it and gone, the hits or the singles were not the best part of this album. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel the opposite here. I kind of feel like the singles were the singles because they are the best parts of this album. Now, you said that you were enjoying the first part of this album, and after the first 20 minutes or so, I think your time is skewed, because this album, minus that last acoustic track, which I don't really want to talk about, so is 38 minutes and 58 seconds.
You're right. I think if I'm being more accurate, it's like the first 16 minutes or so. Yeah. It's about the first 13 to 16 minutes, because up until Misery Business, I'm kind of into some of it. We'll get to it when we get to this track, the song by song. But there's little bits and pieces of all those first few songs that I'm kind of into. But about track 5 or 6 is when it really started to hit me that, like, this isn't really pop punk. This isn't really emo. This is like formulaic teen pop rock, which, again, if you told me we were going to do Ashley Tisdale's debut album, I would have been excited, because I've heard that album and I like it. I owned it. So I'm not mad about that. But when I'm expecting Newfound Glory and I get Ashley Tisdale, I'm not as happy about it.
All right. So before we jump into the track listing, I do want to talk about the producer on this. So it's a guy by the name of David Bendeth, and I've never heard of this fella before, but he has been around and done a ton of stuff. Now, I just picked a list of bands, just some of his stuff. He worked with, and this is all before this album, Hawk Nelson, Chiodos, The Almost, In Flames, Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, Breaking Benjamin, Pillar, Hawthorne Heights, Blindside, Clutch, Killswitch Engage, Crossfade, and he actually produced some of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre album or soundtrack in 2004. So, and he had quite a few soundtrack credits along with tons of bands, and his credits go back to the 70s. And so I say that to say, this guy knows what he's doing, and this album is very well produced. The production behind it is very good.
There's a reason this blew up. Like, totally makes sense. And I'm glad you mentioned a band in that list, Hawk Nelson.
Yes. So sorry, Vertical Horizon SR-71 as well.
Great. I actually do like both of those.
I own a SR-71 album, and I kind of like Vertical Horizon. So,
Hey, Vertical Horizon's that.
Oh, I know. I don't want to talk about it.
Pop rock. You know it's good.
We don't need to say it out loud.
I know that some people, if you're listening to this, and God bless you if you are, but some people might say, well, of course, this sounds a little bit more poppy and easy on the ears and a little less edgy because they're a Christian band. But around this same time, you had Christian bands in a very similar, and I'm not obviously, I'm not going to say Under Oath, like that's a different genre. But in this genre, you had bands like Hawk Nelson, MXPX, The Wedding, and Berlin. Those are bands that had a similar vibe, but had a little bit more oomph, a little bit more attitude. If you want to make it a female thing, Flyleaf. There were Fireflight. There was a few of them. That's the thing. I was expecting a little bit more out of that, especially because I've heard Misery Business 5 million times.
Right.
And that one is a little snarky. That one does have a little bit of that attitude. But then the rest of it is so like saccharine that I
was expecting more of Misery Business type stuff on this album.
Me too.
But okay, so all right, several of the bands that I mentioned, Pillar, Blindside, and Slick Shoes were all or are all Christian bands, and so this guy is able to jump between. But Blindside and Pillar are two very different ends of the spectrum when it comes to like heavier music, and then Slick Shoes is almost at the other end of the spectrum. I mean, and all those bands I would rather listen to than this. And the thing about it is, I was looking into this, and they all had, like, all the members have had religious upbringings, but none of them were identifying as any sort of religion at the point of really the band forming.
I knew Haley Williams grew up singing like in churches and stuff, and grew up like youth groups and stuff. But something else I've noticed over the years, like Under Oath and a few others, they sort of go from being Christian bands to wanting to shed that so bad that they kind of go really hard opposite Christian, which is like, it's fine. You were kind of under a microscope, like Haley Williams, for example, being an attractive young lady back in 2007, but also trying to be like Christian singer. And, that's a hard thing to balance. So I'm sure it's very liberating to be able to now be more herself and, open for Taylor Swift in front of millions of people every day, right. So I'm not mad at her for just being who she wants to be, but I don't know. Like, and also I try not to be too disrespectful here because they were kids. I mean, they were like late teens, early 20s. And when I was in my late teens and early 20s, you didn't hear my songs on the radio. You still don't hear any of my shit on the radio because it's not that good. So they were, and I even tried to check, like, did they have other people helping them write this album? And I don't think they did. I don't think that really started till the next one. So
this album was written by Haley and another member of the band, but then also the producer, David Bendeth.
Okay. And obviously some of these songs have that studio production writing structure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can kind of feel some of that, which makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So you ready to jump into it?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. So let's talk about track one. Okay, before we go any further, sorry, I got to mention this right quick. The emo titles are strong here.
They're not
strong,
terrible.
But it's one of the stronger ones that we've done.
The first track is very guilty of it.
So track one, for a pessimist, I'm pretty optimistic.
I put my faith in you, so much faith, and then you just threw it away. You threw it away.
This one starts like a Killer song.
So I actually have in my notes, when the song started, I was like, yeah, that's pretty much what I was expecting.
Yeah.
This one does not feel odd next to Misery Business. Like this one has an emo pop punk feel to it.
So what I can say for this one is, okay, when listening to this intentionally, I kind of got tired of it about halfway through. About halfway through, I was like, okay, I'm done here. But I did put on, I put on iHeartRadio at work earlier, just popped a headphone in, and this was playing, and I got about halfway through it and was like, it's not bad. It's like if I'm not paying attention, I like it better. But if I'm listening to it intentionally, I'm good. I'm not optimistic.
I think it's fine. It's a decent opener. It has a lot of energy that some of the other tracks don't have, so it makes sense as an opener. I like the little switch up of the rhythm that's from like 38 to 47 seconds.
Well, what's the problem? You got a lot of nerve.
Just for a brief second, I was getting a little bit of like a Story of the Year vibe, which I liked them a lot, those first like 2 or 3 albums.
I know you did.
And then there's also a fun noodly bit around 241 where the guitar shows off a little bit. I like that.
Why don't you stand up, be a man about it? Fight with the open.
So what you're getting at is actually part of what I want to get to, which is musically, this track's on point. I actually really liked it because musically, the energy was there until she starts singing and then it goes away. And then in the chorus, it comes back. But then it kind of goes away whenever she starts singing, like in the verses and stuff.
Maybe it's because I was playing shows with bands similar to this around this time, and my bands weren't. I mean, we were a little different than this. We were a little heavier, but still kind of in the same ballpark. I could just like close my eyes and see them on stage. I could see them in my head performing. Like, I'd seen so many bands that sounded just like this that, you know, what exactly was the thing that made Paramore stand out amongst the rest of them? I mean, Haley Williams.
Yeah.
Because honestly, this is fairly stock generic pop punk emo. It's fine. And if you grew up listening to that and you love it, I get it. But it's in 2024, it's just kind of fine.
The drum fill at 57 seconds is nice. That goes back to what I was saying. Musically, the song's on point.
The drum fill is cool. The guitar noodles are cool. Like, I mean, there's some neat stuff going on, but just as a whole, I don't know. It's got a lot of energy. It's a good way to start the album, but it's not super memorable.
All right, so let's talk about track 2. That's what you get. I didn't hate this one. I didn't hate it. This was one where I felt like, again, musically, on point. I thought the guitar work here was great. The riffs in this song were fantastic. I thought the drums were great. But as far as how she sings in this one, the way she sings in the chorus is so much better than the way she does in the verses. And that's actually something that's a continuing theme throughout this album.
I will agree with you on the choruses. The way the different melodies she does on the whoa, whoa, whoas in the choruses are really cool. And she doesn't repeat them exactly the same. So it kind of keeps it kind of fresh sounding, even though, you know, you're just kind of repeating the chorus. Also really like the way she sings the word why at 139. It's one of those like, why's, like kind of like walks down with it. It's cool.
I never learned why. All the
My favorite part, though, is after the intro, which I do like the guitar tone and everything, the drums are almost like in a waltz. It's like an emo waltz.
Sir, well, I don't want to be the blame, not anymore. It's your
For a couple measures. And I get mixing it up and changing the drum patterns throughout the verse, but I kind of wish they would have just hung in that, like, because that is such a unique vibe for this kind of band, you know? Right.
Now, I have something about those whoa, whoa, whoas you're talking about and how she sang them different. I think that this one here is written to be a live song, but it works really well on the album. And so it was put here. And she does the whoa, whoa, whoas different because she's going to do them different live.
Maybe.
Yeah. I just think this was written as a live song that just happened to work really well on the album.
Yeah, like and so again, the woes are nice. You got a little bit of a waltzy vibe. Again, this is a cool song. It doesn't resonate with me super hard as a damn near 40-year-old man, but I get it. Like, I was there when these songs were being written and played, and I understand it. It's just not my thing. So I'm not mad at it. I was still kind of vibing with this one.
Yeah, that's something that I do want to kind of harp on, if you will, is this album just isn't our thing. Like you said at the beginning, every band is somebody's favorite band and every album is somebody's favorite album. And this might be both of those for somebody or for quite a few people.
For a lot of people.
Oh, I know it is. I know it is. This album blew up.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just not my thing.
And that's why I brought up the Blue Album by 311. Like, if you weren't there in 1995 and it wasn't the first band you saw in concert and it wasn't the first band you fell in love with, you're not going to appreciate it the same way someone who did. So 2007 me was already kind of growing out of this. Like, there were still some stuff that I liked coming out that was sort of pop punk adjacent, but I never got into the super emo-y stuff. And then the pop punk was starting to wear off. So yeah, I think that's like when we did The Used, their debut album. I feel like if that was important to you when it came out, you're going to still love it today. But if you don't have that nostalgic hold on it, it's just kind of stock generic pop punk emo stuff.
And maybe that's why I love that album more than you did.
Oh yeah, absolutely why. Absolutely why.
All right, so let's talk track 3, Hallelujah.
Let's make it last forever. Screaming hallelujah. We'll make
The riffs are strong on this one. I love the guitar work on this track.
I love just about everything about this track. I think this probably my favorite song on the album. I think this is really good.
Okay, so allegedly, this was a song that Hayley Williams and her band wrote to show Atlantic that they shouldn't be fired.
I wouldn't fire them. If I was teetering on the fence and you showed up with this, I'd have said, okie dokie, give me about 6 more of these, please.
Yeah, but they did not. So
no, they did.
Yeah. All right. This is not my favorite on the album, but I like this one fine. This was not my least favorite by any means. I will agree with you on that. That far, let's put it that way. I really like the riffs throughout this song, but in the bridge, we deal with something here that we've dealt with in the past. The guitar work is doing something really cool, but I need her to stop singing.
and we've got time on our
I need her to stop.
See, this is where it's funny that this is called Paramore, because it really just feels like a Hayley Williams album.
It does.
Like, it makes sense that it's compared to Avril Lavigne and Kelly Clarkson, and I keep bringing up Axel. Yeah, because that's what it feels like. I feel like I'm getting a ton of Hayley Williams personality, but not a ton from the band. Now, this one not as bad as some of the other songs, because like you said, there are some cool little guitar lines and stuff. I will say, I'm a little bit of a stickler for guitar tones sometimes, and I don't love the way some of these high-pitched guitar leads are EQ'd in the mix. They're not bad in speakers, but in headphones, they just feel a little...
This was not a headphones album, and I'm going to agree with what you're saying there, just because this was better in the car or just through speakers. I would not advise anybody to listen to this in headphones. You're not going to get anything extra in headphones.
Yeah, this isn't the kind of album that has a bunch of like nuanced like production secrets hidden in the mix. Like
there's not even stuff happening in one side that's not in the other, or and that kind of stuff. Like it's just not there. And so skip headphones if you want to listen to this album.
So a lot of those little lead licks, though, I thought sounded really good. Just the tone of them was not my desired tone. Like, that's not what I would shoot for that kind of a lead lick. But Hayley Williams, like, really shows her range and her power, the way she sings, very similar to the last track. She sings the melody of the word hallelujah in different ways, and all of them sound pretty good. But I have one thing that I can't decide if I love it or if I hate it. Did you notice anything weird about the very last hit of the music? It's off. If you're paying attention and you're listening like metronome style, like 1, 2, 3, 4, the very last like hit is just a fraction of a second off. The whole band is on it. I think what it is if you listen to the rhythm of the verse, how it does that da 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 bum bum bum, it kind of does that, but it's slightly off, and it has to be intentional because I'm sure they're playing to a click.
You know, I didn't take note of it, and I want to actually say, as you're talking about it, and I really didn't pay any attention to it, I think I know what you're talking about, because I said in my notes, we do get a really good quick solo after the bridge. And then it felt uncomfortable. And I think that's why.
It really, if it is one of those, it reminded me of Fight Club, when he used to do the subliminal adult films inside of the movies as he was. Oh
yeah, it'd be an animated film and then a penis would show up.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It felt like an off-tempo penis just hit me right there at the very end, and I was not expecting it.
I mean, I don't know what an on-tempo penis is, but you know, whatever. All right, track 4, Misery Business.
So good, 'cause I got it where I want it now. And if you could, then you know you would. It's gotta just feel so, it just feels so good.
The hit.
Yes, the hit. The biggest hit of, I don't know, 2007. I don't know. This song was everywhere. And
It's one of the biggest pop punk hits of all time, pretty much.
Oh, yeah. But to be honest with you, I've always liked this song. Now, it's one of those things that, like, I actually went a long time without hearing it. And, you know, towards the end of that first period, I was getting kind of tired of it. But when I started listening to things where this popped up again, I didn't mind it. And the thing is that the girls love this song. And so we play this song in the car all the time. And the thing is that I never mind putting it on because I genuinely like this song.
It makes sense that this was a hit. I totally get that.
Oh, yeah.
Again, the whoa-ohs are really catchy, and the whole vibe of the song is cool. But I will say a couple things that I picked up on that I never really paid attention to because, again, you know, when we do this show, it makes you listen to music a little differently than just casually on the radio. Number one, that intro, did not know it had that old timey like record player intro thing.
It's neat.
Didn't know that. And I like the little, we've talked about this before, those little spurts of personality where you hear Hayley in the studio like, okay, hit the snare, you know, like, I like that. But again, this is one of those songs that I have a hard time relating to because I've never been a young lady fighting with another young lady over a young man, or I've never been a young man who's had two young ladies fighting over him. So I'm completely on the outside looking in here.
Well, let me tell you, as a young man that has I agree with you. I have had a hard time identifying with this, but I have always really liked just this song. Like it's a fun song to me. This is not a song to throw on and like on a rainy day or whatever, you know, it's not that. This one is a fun driving song.
Yeah, and if more of the album sounded like this, I think I would have been a little bit more into it. But this, to me, this was the single because it is the most aggressive and has the biggest hook.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say there's not other good stuff on the album, but like, I get why this was the big single. And then the next single I know like might be the closest to this one. So I get why that was a single. But yeah, like this one, that chorus is Money in the Bag. That, whoa, everybody can sing to that. Everybody's going to love that. Also, the way she says the word brag, and she has that just little bit of like, brag.
Never my intention to brag.
To like that little hook.
The little dive bomb.
Yes, that's another one of those like, ooh, got it.
It's
nice.
cute. It's cute.
Again, Haley, I mean, it feels like a solo album because she is taking mediocre songs and elevating them with her vocal performances.
This feels more like the Haley Williams solo album than the Falling in Reverse album felt like the Ronnie Radke show.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what's funny is Haley Williams has released albums under just Haley Williams, and Ronnie Radke keeps calling it Falling in Reverse.
True. All right, let's talk about track 5, When It Rains.
You don't see the sun anymore. No, how could you do it? Oh, I never saw it coming.
Now, the intro to this song, did you get anything from the intro?
This specifically, no, but this whole song made me think of like mid-career Taylor Swift way more than any kind of pop punk.
All right. So the intro of this, it rides this like mid-90s, like post-grunge sound. It's almost a Hootie song.
Yeah, but it's too clean. That's what I mean. Like it feels too sanitized for that, because a Hootie song, he's going to crack jokes about crying during the Dolphins football games. And it's going to be very like personable and very whatever. This is very generic, kind of broad stroke, so everybody can enjoy it. I understand it, why it's here and why this is probably somebody's favorite song. I get it. But it's not for me.
No, it's not for me either.
It sounds like it could be on that 1989 Taylor Swift album we did, or it could be on Red. Like, it feels like it's that era of Taylor Swift pop, not country, but not rock. It's just there. I don't know. This one I don't care for very much.
No, this feels like if Dashboard Confessional was the backing band for Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I'm not even getting that emo from it though. Like that's the thing, is like the beat's too fast to be emo, but then it's not poppy enough to really hook me. So I'm kind of left in that weird middle ground. I will compliment a couple things. I think there's these big chords in the back of the verse that I like. I like the way those are EQ'd, and there's just like big open chord strummed behind the rest of the verses. And then the drums in the bridge get very Ringo-esque. And I like that.
You're right.
Like there's little tom fills and stuff that reminded me of Ringo for some reason. But yeah, as a whole, this is just not the kind of song I would gravitate towards.
Okay, so I want to go back to what you talked about in the beginning. You said that you were having a good time at the beginning of this album, and then it started to come off. And so I feel like this is where that happened for you.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Absolutely.
because this is where it happened for me too. And okay, so far, some of the songs just haven't been my thing, but they've not all been bad. I haven't hated any of them, and then we get the peak of Misery Business. Cool. And it got real big. I get it. Awesome. And then When It Rains.
Yeah, for a pessimist, I liked the energy, had some fun moments. That's what you get. I don't love it, but her vocals are great. I can get into it. Told you, Hallelujah is probably my favorite. Misery Business got a lot of like, it's a little more aggressive, all in. And then it just changes. Then I just feel like there's this shift in the album, and I don't love where it goes.
No, I don't either. So let's talk about track 6, Let the Flames Begin.
Can't let myself regret such selfishness. My pain and now the trouble caused. No matter how long, I believe that there's hope.
Okay, so I love the intro, and she does sound good in the intro. She does.
What a shame we all became such fragile, broken things.
But after that, the verses just don't do it. The choruses are so much stronger than the verses in this song.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wasn't feeling this one.
The only thing that I really, really like about this one is the guitar work.
Yeah.
I think the guitar at the beginning sounds nice. The drums kind of mix it up a little bit. Like there's some neat ideas here. I don't know that it's executed perfectly, but I really like the guitar. The bridge, I was really hoping that they would do like a halftime kind of thing for the bridge. They don't.
Right.
They do it for a brief moment at the outro, but it doesn't really hit the way I was kind of thinking it would in the bridge.
It's because you wanted it so much at a certain point, and then you were let down by it, and so that feeling of being let down just kind of carried itself through. And I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's like I felt like that bridge was like, the bridge was fine. Like all I could say is the bridge was fine, because it's like it just was almost there. Like it just needed to get over it, and I think it could have if she didn't sound so damn sleepy in the bridge.
I slid down into light.
She kind of was, I feel like Hayley Williams is the reason why that bridge is held back. And then you almost get it to go into that halftime that, you know, it's almost there, and then it fades out.
I think the drums go halftime, but the guitars don't chop it up enough to really make that halftime feel impactful.
Right.
And I almost feel like that's calculated because we can't go too heavy. You know what I mean? That's what it almost feels like to me. Like they're trying not to be heavy.
But you don't go heavy at all.
Yeah, like I don't think it would have been, especially with how the first song has a little bit of that happening. Like I wish they could have just chopped it up just a smidge in this one, because again, I think the guitar work on this song is really nice. There's a little guitar solo there. It's not really a solo, but there's like these lead lines in the bridge and the outro that I think sound really, really good. And if they would have just chopped up the rhythm of the guitar and bass a little bit more on that halftime part, it would have almost saved the whole song for me. But as it is, it's kind of middling. It's got some neat things, but I just not super catchy or memorable.
Yep, I feel the same way. All right, so let's talk about track 7, Miracle.
Let you give up on a miracle when it might save you. We've learned to run from anything uncool.
Where are you on this one? Your face tells me no.
Well, it's a lot like the last one. There's a couple things that I like, but as a whole, it just doesn't stick with me. I like how like big and bright the chords are, like especially coming out of how the previous song is a little bit in more of a minor key. This one feels like it's more in a major, and it's a little bit more aggressive. They do throw in a little bit of a halftime thing in the middle there, which I appreciated. It's just, I don't know, man. Like,
yeah, no, okay, so I'm with you.
Like,
this one's just
like I don't know what to say because it's so just there.
right. And I said this song is fine. It's not good. It's not great. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, the intro had a great energy to it that I really wish they had kept, but they decided to not do that. And then as soon as it dropped down, I went, I don't care anymore. But then the chorus happened. It's like, okay, it's back, and then it's gone.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, the chorus is big, but it's not super memorable or catchy.
I can't tell you what any part of this song, like the big energy parts, I remember taking the notes, but I do not remember the song.
Yeah, I did like her voice again. There's some moments where she chooses to do these little runs that were giving me a little bit of Lacey Sturm vibes, a little bit of Flyleaf vibes. The song does not really sound like a Flyleaf song at all, but just little hints of it there. Again, like you said, it's fine. I'm not mad at it. It doesn't come on and I'm like, oh, turn this off. But I'm also not going, that was great, I want to hear it again.
Right. I'm not waiting for it to be over, but I'm not mad when it is.
It's a good way to say it.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about track 8. I want to pronounce this as it's one word, but I can't. So crush, crush, crush.
Well, come on, let's play. 'Cause I'd rather waste my life pretending than have to forget you for one whole minute. They take
With no spaces.
I was wondering how you're going to...
Yeah.
The name of this song is the sound I make when I eat frosted mini wheats.
The name of this song is the sound that my knees make when I stand up.
That too.
All right. So I get why this is a single. I totally get it. It's catchy from beginning to end. It's a catchy song. This is not a bad song. I mean, I like the sound. I like every part of the sound. But I hate her words of the song. I hate the lyrics to the song, especially the part where she says, rock and roll, baby. Don't you know what we're all alone? I need to sing about. And I don't even, like, I didn't even waste time getting the rest of it because it's just that, like, rock and roll, baby. Yeah, nah, I hated it.
rock and roll, baby. Don't you know that we're all alone now? I need something to sing about.
I think actually she repeated that part over again. Yeah. So
I have written in my notes, the little bridge that starts around 158 was giving me kind of this just rock and roll vibe. So she literally says rock and roll just to make sure I don't miss it. Like, we get it. We get it. This is a rock and roll kind of, this is almost Joan Jett sort of anthemic big rock chords. Cool. You don't have to say it. We got it. There's also a little twinge of like 80s new wave in there.
a little bit, which is the sound that we got more from them later, especially on their like most recent album.
Yeah. So it's cool to hear sort of the beginnings of that here. I like the way she sings lies and spies in the verses.
Little spies, they taped over your mouth, scribbled out the truth with their lies. You little spies.
It actually kind of reminded me of, I think her name is Han from Hot Milk, the way she sings sometimes. So I was into that.
Hot Milk's a band I forget about a lot.
I hate to say it this way. I was big on Hot Milk. I thought they were, that sounds gross. But I heard the song Glass Spiders and was immediately hooked. And I loved the like singles and EPs they were putting out. But the minute they started putting out albums, they kind of fell off for me. Okay. And it usually doesn't happen that way for me. So I was a bit shocked. But yeah, their first couple things that I heard, I was all in. Anyway, they were touring with Foo Fighters. They're doing fine for themselves. Yep. As far as this song goes, I like this one. This one is about as close to Misery Business as it gets again. So I was into this one. Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with this one being here by any means. I enjoyed this one. So all right.
I kind of forgot this was on this album. Like I recognized the title, and then when it started, I was like, oh yeah, this song. Because every time I read the title, the first song that popped into my head was "It's Just a Little Crush." Doesn't find me.
It's just a little crush, not like
And I was like, oh, it's not that one. Okay,
No.
bummer.
No, it's not. All right, so track 9, We Are Broken. So this is where Paramore decided to go Flyleaf.
They wish.
Well, no, like this is where it's like they tried to do that, like more in the way of Flyleaf, like praise and worship, third wave emo.
Yeah, this to me just sounds like a straight up praise and worship song.
It does. It's a mid tempo song. Yeah, I didn't like.
Yeah, me neither. Like it's fine. I get why they do it. She sounds good. I like the piano in there. That's a nice touch. I actually, weird thing to like be drawn to, but I was really bored while listening. I like the bass guitar in the second verse.
It's very specific.
It is, but it's the one thing that gives it a little bit of energy, because I felt like this is a very, like you said, it's mid-tempo. It's very straightforward. I couldn't help just because the broken part of it. I kept thinking about that Amy Lee and Seether song about being broken, and
Yeah.
Because I'm broken.
that's very cliched. I'm broken. We're broken. But this was 2007, so I'll give it a pass. But yeah, not into it.
Did that Amy Lee song did it come out in 2007? I feel like it was about, I don't know, I feel like it was about like 2005, 6, somewhere in there.
It came out in 2004.
Okay.
So, wow, I thought it was later than that.
Which, non-Paramore music theory, I think Seether sounds like what Nirvana would sound like had Kurt Cobain not been murdered.
So Seether is sort of known for their slightly more, not quite new metal, but tiptoeing the line.
Yeah.
But if you really listen to, especially their older records, it's Nirvana. It is a straight up grunge / post grunge. They sound more like Puddle of Mud than they do, Korn. But because of the songs on the radio, I think they're known as being a little bit more upbeat, but they're definitely, I agree, the Nirvana Kurt Cobain comparison is spot on.
Yeah. All right. So track 10, Fences.
Think there's no place else you'd rather be, and now you can't turn back, because this road is all you'll ever have, and it's obvious.
But this starts like it's going to be a good time. It starts like the circus has come in. Like when she starts singing, it's like the circus has arrived.
I'm sitting in a room made up of only big white walls, and in the hall there are people.
And then there's something that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Do I even need to talk about the tambourine?
There's a lot of tambo. There is a lot of loud tambo.
There is. Like, you're not kidding. It's so damn loud. It's like, I feel like they mixed the song around the tambourine.
There in the liner notes, it says, and on lead tambourine.
Yeah, like, I feel like where her voice has been in the forefront for all this album, suddenly, it's like, hey, guys, we're building fences out of tambourines.
Yeah, and okay, so we've talked about this before. You get late in your album, so you start to mix it up and you throw a couple new things out there, and I can appreciate that. But for some reason, it didn't work for me.
Nope.
Like I got what they were going for, and like you said, at first I was kind of like, okay, we got a little different rhythm here. We got almost like a big band swing thing happening. Like, okay. But yeah, it's not as much fun as you think it's going to be.
No, it's not. I do think the song gets better for this little stretch that starts at 149.
Yeah, you're asking for it with every breath that you're breathing.
And then it doesn't. But then there's this nice little solo with this annoying muted acoustic guitar on top of it that just takes away from the solo. What happened, guys? What happened? You had a producer that's been producing some really cool stuff since the 70s. What happened on Fences?
Well, it's funny, we do this show and we often talk about albums versus singles versus, written as an album, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
This is back in the day when people were still buying full albums.
Right.
And the concept of a filler track was not necessarily a disrespectful term. It was, guys, we got to have 10, 11, 12, 13 songs to make people buy this album. They're going to know one or two of these, but we got to fill out the rest of the album. And so this one just feels like they probably had a couple other songs laying around. There's probably a deluxe version of this with 5 or 6 B-sides or something. And this was one they went with because it did feel a little different, had a unique beat to it or something. If I had to guess, nobody in Paramore is going to tell you this was their favorite song or they think this is the best song they ever wrote.
Now, I know that Paramore now does not have the same lineup that it did when this album came out.
It might just be Haley.
Well, I know it's Haley Williams and then some other people. Like, it's still considered a band. And it's not just the Haley Williams show with a backing band. Like, there are members, and there's 2 members that have been there for a long time, for several albums. Cool. Yeah, but they're not the same members that are on this album. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you that those new guys have learned every song on this album except for Fences.
How far back are we going on the set list tonight, fellas? Well, we're going to play Riot from start to finish. Oh, really? I never learned Fences. Oh, well, we're going to skip that one.
We're going all the way back and we're going to stop at the fence.
Yes. Because we don't need anything else after that anyway. No. Actually, we're going to stop at Crush, Crush, Crush. Right, we don't need to go any further.
We're going to close the show at Crush, Crush, Crush. All right, so track 11, Born for This.
Tell me, do you feel the pressure now? Right now, you're the only reason I'm not letting go. Time out if everyone's worth pleasing.
Musically, this one is great. Musically. And I really like the yelling that happens in the background. I think it's a neat change. Like, we haven't had that on this album at all.
And back to the same road. And where's hope when misery comes crawling? Oh, my way, hey, with your
I wish there was more. But I don't like this song until 2:45. Just I think it's cool musically. I dig the yelling, but there's not enough of it for me to really like it. There's enough of it for me to go, that was cool. That was cool. And what's happening musically is completely just squashed by what she's doing vocally. I don't like it. I don't like any of that. And then at 2:45, we get this really cool part.
We were born for this.
And then it stops. But that part should have been the song. That's all I got to say about this one. This song is called Born for This, and I am done for this. I'm done with this.
I will read you all of my notes on this song.
All right.
I'm glad they went out on a heavier song, but it fell flat. I'm sure it was meant to sound big and anthemic, but I wasn't buying it. And that little distorted vocal before the choruses, the first time is at 47 to 52 seconds. Don't like that.
The first time was the only time that I needed that.
I didn't need it the first time.
None of the song really worked for me all the way through because musically I thought it was cool, but what she is doing is squashing it. I do like the yelling, but there's not enough of it. And the part of the song that I thought was cool ended.
This almost sounds like they're trying to get a little bit of an edge, and it feels false.
Well, they went for an edge for the last song of their album.
But it's not the last song.
Right. And I mentioned before I didn't really want to talk about it, and it's because I just don't have anything to say about it. Okay, Track 12, Misery Business Acoustic.
I'm sorry, that'll never change. And about forgiveness, we're both supposed to have exchange. I'm sorry, Yachty, but I passed it up. Now look this way. There's a million other girls that do it just like you, looking as innocent as possible to get to who they wanted.
Here's all I'll say. I have one note. They were sitting in the studio and they said, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a hit. Put it on the album twice, Sugar Ray style.
Right. And that's exactly what I thought when I saw it, or when I listened to it. I was like, I don't even want to talk about this, because it's like, hey, we're going to do this, the hit song completely different, just like Sugar Ray did.
I remember back in the day, everybody listen up if you're under the age of like 30. If you couldn't buy the album, if you didn't have $12 or $15 to buy the album, but you really wanted the song, you bought the single. Now, in order for record labels to really capitalize on that, they wanted you to buy both. So even if you bought the album, sometimes you would still get the single because they would put a remix on it or a B-side on it or something you couldn't get on the album. This, to me, sounds like what you would have put on the single for this.
I think
your Misery Business CD single would have been the album version with the intro, the radio edit without the intro, and then an acoustic version. And guess what? You sell that for $5, you'll sell 1 million copies of that.
It's
and
true.
Then people are still going to buy the album, so
yeah, they will. And I am one of the millions of people that bought a single and then an album to follow it. There's actually quite a few just singles that I have, and all of those singles, it came in the jewel case with the CD, and usually just it was like a scrap piece of paper for the insert. But I didn't care. I still don't care. I still think they're cool. But you're right. You put out a single, you put out the single for people to buy, and let's say you didn't have enough money to buy the full album, so you bought the single, you listened to it until you decided that you were going to just go buy the damn album. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. So cool. All right. Monster, what's new with you?
Hey, good looking. What you got? Cooking.
I'm going to go with Hallelujah. Partially because it's my favorite song on the album. And it's the only one that consistently is mid-tempo. Not that it really grooves. There's not a lot of groove in this album. I'll be honest, I casually listen through some of the other albums a little bit. I think their newer stuff actually has a lot of groove because they're going for more of a dancey pop vibe. But when they were more of a quote unquote rock band, they weren't a groovy, bouncy kind of band. There's that one little section of For a Pessimist that has a little bit of that, but I'll say Hallelujah.
Okay.
In Danger, what's cooking?
Nope. Nothing. I played this several times while cooking, and nothing really jumped out at me. Sure, Misery Business did, and Crush did, just because they were the singles and I recognized them, but there was not one part of this that I enjoyed having on in my kitchen.
This might be there's been a couple that I did not have a new for. This might be the first that you don't have a cooking for.
Yep. I think, no, I didn't for Big Dump Face.
Which is a shame, because that's a great record.
Is it?
It's a record.
All right, you want to give me your closing statement?
Sure. Paramore proved they are destined for pop stardom with their sophomore release, Riot. With just enough electric guitar to still call it a rock album, Riot shows the band going in a very commercial direction. Not that they were very edgy to begin with, but Riot shaves off any rough edges they may have had in the beginning and created a bright, shiny, safe alternative to bands like Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, and My Chemical Romance. The Disney Channel equivalent to mall emo. And I personally don't believe that has to do with them being a quote-unquote Christian band, because you also had bands like Anne Boleyn, The Wedding, and Flyleaf around this time that were not that dissimilar in style, but felt like they had more substance. Most songs are pretty straightforward with big catchy choruses. formulaic, but that's because it works. By 2007, I was already kind of over this emo pop punk kind of sound. And in 2024, this holds no real nostalgic value for me. And just judging it from what it is, it feels weak and uninteresting compared to a lot of their contemporaries who were around at the time. 1 to 10, I'm going to say 5.38.
All right, 5.38. Monster, is there something you'd like to ask me?
Danger, would you like to give us your closing statement?
Sure. There was rarely a time when the sound of a period was so closely identified with that part of the generation, quite like this one was. Black eyeliner and swooped hair for boys and girls was everywhere. Going on Warped Tour was almost a badge of honor. Then Paramore gave us an album. That's all. This is an underwhelming flagship album. I never really understood the appeal outside of the hits, and I still don't. Good riffs don't make a good album alone. With that being said, they are Taylor Swift's opening band on one of the biggest tours ever, so obviously I'm in the minority. I gave this album a 4.5.
Man.
My closing statement was really short because I didn't have a lot.
Quick side note, I have some friends, friend of the show, Mr. Ben, who's put in a couple of requests that one we have done and one we will do in the future soon. I gave him a little bit of my thoughts on this album before we recorded, and his response to me was, God, man, why can't you be normal? So, like you said, we are in the minority. A lot of other people think very highly of this band and this album. So, hey, you're in good company. What do we know?
All right. So Monster gave this a 5.38 and I gave it a 4.5, which gives it a 4.94, right below From Zero and right above Blind Guardian in the 62nd position.
Now that would be a tour.
Thank you for listening this far into this episode. And if you know somebody who would like this album or who likes this album, please send them this episode so they can get angry along with you. Because, yeah, just going to be honest, I know we weren't as nice to this album as we have been to other ones. So if you have a comment, a complaint, a thought you'd like to share with us about this episode or an album that you'd like for us to talk about in the future, then please shoot us an email at breakdownsbreakfast@gmail.com or head on over to the Facebook page for Breakdowns for Breakfast and let us know there. Monster, what album are we talking about next week?
Next week, we will be discussing the band Movements and their album from 2020 called No Good Left to Give. Danger, do you know how much fruit you should have in one day?
How much?
A Paramore.
Hey, this is Anthony from This Wildlife, and you're listening to Breakdowns. Fuck.